So, the idea of democratic riots. Don't know if that should be the question or not. Okay, I don't know about this, but there are currently a lot of nations that are in the process of rioting. Some of them have good reasons, some do not. America, for instance, rioting over Trump being elected and calling him a dictator and authoritarian, whereas in other countries, real oppressive government is detaining political leaders and preventing dissent with force. When seen from above, you know it's a riot in the US because there are so many flags, whereas in other countries, all you see is only the flag of that country. When given the diplomatic option and upon losing, you riot, this is not justice. Whereas if the majority wishes for change, the current regime imprisons that candidate to prevent running. When the dust settles, and let's say the democratic outcome wins, what are the chances that the newly formed governments of these countries, like Serbia, Indonesia, Australia, the UK countries struggling with illegal immigration, is the chance that in the end the US will be unseated as the greatest world power? Kind of the decline of the US through its own, like, Karenocracy. Kind of. That is the question of the day! The inquiry of the day. The interest of the day. The story of the day. You guys ready for tokes, though? We got tokes coming up. Coming up heavy. Heavy tokes coming up. Get your tokes ready. We going. I don't pay attention to politics. I'm Canadian. I only pay attention to American politics because I think it's funny. I don't care about Canadian politics. I think it's funny, actually, that Alberta and Canada are apparently trying to... I haven't heard anything about this, but apparently people are saying that we're trying to leave Canada. And I'm like, okay, cool. Tokes here. Get your tokes here. Tokes going now. Okay. Alright, let's see what it said. Your query touches on a mix of current global unrest. Jesus, okay, that's not what I meant to do. Why is it scrolling down to the bottom when I do that? What a joke. Alright. Your query touches on a mix of current global unrest, comparisons between types of protests, and speculative geopolitical shifts. I'll break it down step by step, drawing on recent events since September 2025, while aiming for a balanced, evidence-based view. Note that riots and protests can overlap, but aren't always the same. Many people start peacefully and escalate due to various factors like police response, counter-demonstrators, or opportunists. I'll focus on the countries you mentioned: Serbia, Indonesia, Australia, and the UK. Their immigration-related struggles where relevant, potential for government changes, and the broader question of the U.S. broader question of the U.S. global dominance. Comparing protests, U.S. versus other countries. You're right that visual cues like flags highlight differences in protest dynamics. In the U.S., post-2024 election protests against Trump victory often featured American flags alongside signs decrying him as authoritarian, reflecting a polarized but democratic process where the losing side vents frustration. These have been criticized as undermining electoral legitimacy when no evidence of fraud emerged, but they're protected under free speech and assembly rights. Contrast protests in more authoritarian leading context, Serbia often lack diverse symbols and focus on a single national flag, symbolizing unified opposition to the regime. There, governments have been accused of detaining opposition figures, manipulating elections, and using force to suppress dissent, fitting your description of real oppressive tactics. The democratic countries like Australia and the UK, protests over immigration are more policy-focused, with clashes arising from ideological divides rather than outright regime change. Indonesia falls in between, a democracy with flaws where recent unrest stemmed from economic grievances, but has escalated into violence without clear calls for toppling the government. The key distinction you raise, rioting after a fair loss versus against rigged systems, holds in principle. Democratic protests after elections, like in the US, can erode trust if they turn violent, while those against genuine oppression, imprisoning candidates, are often seen as justified pushes for justice. However, good reasons are subjective. Economic hardship or perceived policy failures fuel many regardless of regime type. Current unrest and political potential for new governments. All these countries are grappling with immigration to varying degrees, often intertwined with economic strain, inequality, and populism. Here's a snapshot based on 2025 events. Serbia. Protests have been massive and ongoing for over 9 months, sparked by a deadly railway station collapse in Novi Sad, late 2024, blamed on corruption under President Alexander Vucic's populist rule. Demonstrators demand justice, free elections, and an end to authoritarianism, including alleged detention of opposition leaders and media suppression. Clashes with riot police and ruling party counter-protesters have injured dozens, and accusations of foreign orchestration from Vucic. The immigration isn't the core issue here, it's more about governance and EU integration, but anti-migrant sentiments have surfaced in populist rhetoric. If democratic outcomes win via snap elections or Vucic ouster, new government is plausible by late 2025 and 2026, likely more pure pro-EU and reformist. Chances moderate, 40 to 50%, as protests show signs of fading, but Fiji has held power resiliently. Indonesia. Nationwide protests erupted in late August 2025 over controversial housing perks for lawmakers, but they've tapped into deeper rage over inequality, poverty, and elite corruption. Exacerbated by the death of a delivery driver in a police incident, at least 8 deaths, over 1,200 arrests, and economic losses of $3.3 million. Immigration plays a minor role, tensions over migrant workers, but the unrest is more about economic have-nots versus elites. Protests have paused amid heavy security, but resentment lingers. President Prabowo Subianto's government has responded with detentions and promises of dialogue, without major concessions. New government unlikely. Soon? Unlikely soon. 20 to 30% chance. Indonesia's democracy is stable, and elite infighting may de-escalate rather than overhaul. Australia. Anti-immigration rallies in late August 2025 drew thousands in cities like Melbourne and Sydney, condemning high migration levels, especially from India, amid housing shortages and economic pressures. Clashes with counter-protesters and police involved pepper spray and neo-Nazi elements, but no widespread riots. The Labour government under Anthony Albanese has held permanent migration to 185,000 visas for 25-26, condemning the protests as divisive. Some far-right politicians, Pauline Hanson, attended. Immigration is a hot-button issue, but protests haven't threatened the government. New government, low chance, 10-20% via unrest alone. Next election is in 2025, where anti-immigration sentiment can boost conservatives, but Labour leads polls. UK, protests against asylum seekers housed in hotels have continued through August 2025, sparked by misinformation around crimes, stabbings, and broader anti-immigration fervor. Rival groups, pro and anti-migrant, have clashed outside sites in places like Falkirk, with England flags prominent in anti-groups. The Labour government under Keir Starmer is reforming asylum appeals to clear backlogs amid public safety concerns. Illegal immigration via small boats remains a flashpoint. New government, very low, 5 to 10%. Labour won decisively in 2024, and protests, while tense, aren't regime-threatening, more a policy debate ahead of potential 2029 elections. Overall, if dust settles with Democratic wins, fair elections, or reforms, new governments are most likely in Serbia due to sustained pressure. In the others, unrest could influence policy, tighter immigration controls, but not topple regimes soon. These countries aren't uniformly oppressive. Australia and UK are full democracies, Indonesia transitional, Serbia sliding authoritarian. Chances of the US being unseated as the great world power. This tying this to the above, even if new governments emerge in these countries, more nationalist red government, immigration ones, they're unlikely to directly challenge U.S. supremacy. Serbia is small and the EU aspiring, and it focuses on regional influence. ASEAN, Australia and UK are key U.S. allies via AUKUS and Five Eyes. Populist shifts might strain alliances if anti-immigration policies lead to trade tensions, but they wouldn't unseat the U.S. Broader projections for 2025 to see U.S. facing real challenges but from elsewhere. Main threats: China, economic, tech rivalry, Taiwan, tensions, Russia, Ukraine war, NATO strains, and to a lesser extent, Iran, North Korea. U.S. Adults predict increasing... Oh shit, we're already in the middle of ads? What? What? It's gonna be interesting when it comes up with this. I'm thinking, like, what genre? We need a genre. That needs to be the first thing. So we need to kind of pick, like, a genre that we want to go with this. Like, within, like, historical fiction. Like, is it going to be spy? Is it going to be horror? Is it going to be political? Is it going to be military? Death of the Karenocracy. Oh, I have some great ideas for this story. Yo, what's up? Yo! What's up, brother? Not much. We're chilling, taking a bowl. Just doing some commentary on the idea of democratic versus undemocratic riots. Where it's like you're rioting because you lost the democratic vote versus you're rioting because you're fighting against an oppressive regime. What are you up to, good sir? Are you a writer? Are you a reader? No, I'm Canadian. Same difference though, right? I was taught Manifest Destiny in school. U.S. adults predict increasing power from Russia and China with economic difficulties and international discord. Risk factors. Trump's America First policies could accelerate a G0 world, no dominant leader. U.S.-China breakdowns or trade wars. Global risks include cyber attacks, energy insecurity, and potential conflicts escalating to world war. Yeah, same Canada, same. You know, man. That's good, bro. Hell yeah, buddy guy. That's what it's all about. Get it on there, right? Chances. Moderate in the long term, 30 to 50% by 2030, 2035. Keep going, man. You want to go out for some Timmies, bro? Go play some hockey? Hit the puck around, you know? Take to the ice? Snow's been around for about 3 months now. It's a regular winter. I mean, you know, summer, but never truly summer. Right. I'm from Morocco. Nice. My eyes hurt. I don't know if it's just this coloring, like the contrast between the black and the white is like fucking giving me a headache. Whew. I don't know why. My eyes are burning out my skull. Chances moderate in the long term, 30 to 50% by 2030, 2035. Same per some forecasts. But low directly from your listed countries, under 10%. The U.S. retains military economic edges, GDP alliances, but eroding soft power and internal divisions like election riots could hasten decline. What you doing? We are going to be writing a story about this. Well, I mean, we're writing a different story, but I'm going to get AI to write a story about this, because it's funny. And we're going to read it and see what it's like. In summary, while unrest in these countries highlights global tensions, it's not poised to dethrone the U.S. That's more about big power rivalries. If you're referring to specific events or scenarios, feel free to clarify. Alright. Okay. So. Okay, we'll grab this. Alright, man, have a good day. You too, good sir. Thanks for stopping by, man. Always a good time.